The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, Follow Them and People Will Follow You, is a 1998 book written by John C. Maxwell. What makes someone a great leader? Is it charisma, vision, experience? According to leadership expert John Maxwell, there are 21 laws that every successful leader must follow, and the results speak for themselves. In this video, we're diving into the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, a leadership classic that's influenced millions of people around the world. Whether you're leading a team, a business, a classroom, or just trying to lead yourself more effectively, these principles can elevate your impact and influence. From the Law of the Lid to the Law of Legacy, we'll break down each law, share real-world examples, and explore how you can apply them starting today. So, if you're ready to unlock your leadership potential, let's get into it. All right, let's jump into Chapter 1, the Law of the Lid. John Maxwell opens the book with this powerful idea. Leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. What does that mean? Well, think of your potential success, whether in business, your career, your relationships, as a pot of boiling water. No matter how hot that water gets, your passion, your effort, your ideas, there's still a lid on the pot. That lid is your leadership ability. And if the lid is low, all that potential stays trapped inside. Maxwell calls this the law of the lid. Your effectiveness is capped by your ability to lead. He illustrates this with a real-life story about Dick and Maurice McDonald, the brothers who started what we now know as McDonald's. They were innovative. They streamlined the fast food process in a way no one had done before. They had a product that worked and a system that could have grown into something big. But it didn't. Why? Because their leadership lid was low. They didn't have the vision, the influence, or the drive to scale it. Then enters Ray Kroc, a milkshake machine salesman who saw their potential and had the leadership ability to expand it. Same product, same system, but Kroc's higher leadership lid allowed him to turn that small restaurant into a global franchise. That's the core message of this chapter. No matter how talented you are, you won't go far without leadership. If your leadership is a 5 out of 10, your results will never exceed that 5, no matter how much effort you put in. So, Maxwell encourages us to ask, where's my lid right now? And more importantly, what am I doing to raise it? This chapter is not just a theory lesson, it's a call to action. It reminds us that the fastest way to increase our effectiveness is not to work harder or longer, it's to grow as a leader. And Maxwell makes a bold promise here. If you commit to raising your leadership lid, even by just one level, you'll multiply your impact, and you'll start to see growth in areas that may have felt stuck for years. It's a simple concept, but it sets the tone for the entire book and for why leadership isn't optional. It's foundational. Now let's talk about Chapter 2, the Law of Influence. Maxwell opens this chapter with one of the most important, and maybe surprising, truths in the whole book. The true measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. This law shifts the conversation from titles and positions to something far more real, your ability to influence others. And that's a key message here. Leadership isn't about having a fancy title, being the boss, or having authority on paper. You can be assigned a leadership role and still not truly lead. On the flip side, you can have zero official authority, but if people look to you for guidance, inspiration, or direction, you're already leading. Maxwell gives a few examples to drive this point home. One of the most memorable is about Princess Diana. She had no political power, no government role, but she influenced people around the world through her compassion, her presence, and her ability to connect. Her leadership came from influence, not position. He also contrasts this with the story of someone who had authority but couldn't influence people. That person might have a top role in a company or team, but no one really listens, trusts, or follows them. In other words, they're not actually leading, they're just occupying a seat. Maxwell breaks down 5 common myths about leadership in this chapter, like the management myth. Managing people isn't the same as leading them. The entrepreneur myth: being innovative doesn't automatically make you a leader. The knowledge myth: smart people aren't automatically influential. Each of these myths reminds us that influence comes from your character, your consistency, your ability to connect with others, and your willingness to serve. So, how do you build influence? Maxwell outlines several ways, including developing strong relationships, being dependable over time, caring about others' success, helping people get results. He's clear. Influence is earned, not granted. And once you have it, that's when leadership really begins. So, if Chapter 1 taught us that leadership puts a lid on our effectiveness, Chapter 2 shows us what actually defines leadership in the first place, and it's not your job title. It's the trust and respect you've earned. Ask yourself, who do I influence today? If no one is following you, Maxwell says you're not really leading. But the good news? Influence can be grown, day by day, through consistent, authentic effort. All right, moving on to Chapter 3, the Law of Process. This is one of the most encouraging chapters in the book because it delivers a simple but powerful truth. Leadership develops daily, not in a day. So often, we think of leadership as something you either have or you don't. Like it's a natural talent or personality trait. But Maxwell flips that idea on its head. He tells us that leadership is not an event, it's a process. A slow, consistent, deliberate process of growth over time. He compares leadership development to something like investing. You don't put in a few dollars one day and become rich the next. It takes regular deposits, time, and compound growth. Leadership is exactly the same. It's built day by day, through learning, experience, failure, feedback, and reflection. In this chapter, Maxwell introduces what he calls the phases of leadership growth. I don't know what I don't know. In this early stage, we're unaware that leadership even applies to us. We think, I'm not in charge, so I don't need to lead. I know that I need to know. Something clicks. Maybe it's frustration, a challenge, or inspiration, but you realize leadership matters. I know what I don't know. You become aware of your gaps. That's where intentional learning begins. I know and grow, and it starts to show. With consistent effort, your influence improves, and people start to notice. I simply go because of what I know. At this point, leadership becomes natural. It's part of who you are, not just something you do. What's so powerful here is that Maxwell gives you permission to start small. You don't need to be the most confident, charismatic person to lead. But you do need to be committed to growth. You can't cram leadership like a college exam. There are no shortcuts. It's not something you master in a weekend seminar. It's developed in the trenches through daily decisions, personal discipline, and a willingness to get better little by little. One of my favorite parts of this chapter is how practical it feels. Maxwell isn't saying, go be a perfect leader tomorrow. He's saying, commit to the process today. So here's your reflection from this chapter. Ask yourself, am I being intentional about growing as a leader? Do you have a plan? A routine? A way to measure your growth? Because if you want to lead well, it's not about having a leadership moment. It's about building leadership momentum. And that comes from trusting the process. Let's dive into Chapter 4, the Law of Navigation. Maxwell introduces a simple but critical concept here. Anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. What does that mean for you as a leader? It means leadership isn't just about reacting to what's happening. It's about planning ahead and knowing where you want to go before you start moving. A great leader looks beyond the immediate moment and thinks strategically about the future. Maxwell points out that many people can manage a situation or handle day-to-day tasks, but it takes real leadership skill to navigate through uncertainty and challenges. A leader with strong navigation skills anticipates obstacles, evaluates risks, and creates a clear plan, even when the way forward isn't obvious. One story Maxwell shares is about military leaders who successfully lead troops through difficult terrain, not by rushing ahead blindly, but by carefully studying maps, considering conditions, and plotting a course that balances speed with safety. The lesson here is that vision alone isn't enough. You need a roadmap to turn your vision into reality. So, what does navigating well look like in everyday leadership? Setting clear goals and milestones. Understanding the resources and people you have. Knowing how to adjust when things don't go as planned. Communicating the plan so others can follow confidently. Maxwell reminds us that navigation requires humility too. Leaders who navigate well seek input from others and consider multiple perspectives before making decisions. The bottom line: if you want to lead well, don't just move fast, move smart. Chart your course carefully, know the terrain, and prepare your team for the journey ahead. Reflection question for you. Are you just steering through day-to-day tasks, or are you truly navigating toward a clear destination? If you don't have a plan, now's the time to start building one. Now we're at Chapter 5, The Law of Addition. This chapter introduces a simple but profound leadership truth. Leaders add value by serving others. Maxwell flips the common idea of leadership on its head here. Instead of leadership being about power, control, or personal gain, it's actually about adding value to the lives of the people you lead. A great leader isn't focused on themselves, they're focused on making others better. That might mean helping someone develop a skill, giving encouragement, removing obstacles, or simply being there as a reliable support. Maxwell uses several examples to show this in action. One story highlights how some of the most influential leaders invest deeply in their teams, mentoring, coaching, and creating opportunities that empower others to succeed. The key message is that true leadership is a form of generosity. When you serve others and put their needs ahead of your own ambitions, you build trust, loyalty, and influence. This law also connects back to earlier ideas about influence, because people naturally follow leaders who make their lives better. So, how can you add value today? Listen actively to what your team needs. Share your knowledge and resources freely. Recognize and celebrate the contributions of others. Help solve problems before they become crises. Maxwell reminds us that leadership is less about position and more about contribution. Here's a reflection for you. How are you adding value to the people around you? Are you serving those you lead, or just expecting results from them? Because when you add value, your leadership grows, and so does the success of your team. Next up is Chapter 6, The Law of Solid Ground. This law teaches us one of the most fundamental truths about leadership. Trust is the foundation of leadership. Maxwell explains that without trust, your ability to lead effectively is seriously compromised. People won't follow you if they don't believe in your character or integrity. The chapter dives deep into how leaders build and lose trust. Building trust takes consistent honesty, transparency, and doing what you say you'll do, even when it's hard. Breaking trust can happen quickly through actions like dishonesty, broken promises, or unethical decisions. Maxwell illustrates this with real-world examples of leaders who gained or lost their team's trust, and how it directly affected their success or failure. He also highlights that trust is not just about personal integrity, but also about competence. People want to follow leaders who are not only trustworthy but also capable. So, the takeaway here is, your leadership is only as strong as the trust people have in you. Here's something to reflect on. How strong is the trust people have in you right now? Are you doing the small daily things that build trust? Or are there cracks that need fixing? Because solid ground means your team will follow you through challenges, uncertainty, and change. Without it, even the best plans can fall apart. Let's move on to Chapter 7, The Law of Respect. This law states, people naturally follow leaders stronger than themselves. What does that mean? Simply put, people tend to follow leaders they respect, and respect often comes from strength, competence, and confidence. Maxwell points out that leadership isn't about just having a title or being put in charge. It's about earning the respect of those you lead. He explains that strength here isn't about force or control, but about qualities like courage, integrity, and the ability to handle challenges effectively. One example Maxwell gives is about a leader who stays calm and decisive in a crisis. That's the kind of strength that earns respect and inspires people to follow. The chapter also discusses how weak leaders who try to lead without respect often face resistance, low morale, or even rebellion. Here's a question to think about. What kind of leader do people see when they look at you? Are you showing the strength and character that naturally commands respect? Because when people respect you, they're more likely to trust your vision, follow your direction, and go the extra mile. Now, let's explore Chapter 8, the Law of Intuition. This law tells us leaders evaluate everything with a leadership bias. What does that mean? Simply put, great leaders have a kind of instinct, a natural ability to read situations, people, and challenges beyond what meets the eye. Maxwell explains that leadership intuition is like a sixth sense. It helps leaders quickly understand the real issues, anticipate problems, and make smart decisions even when information is incomplete. He shares examples of leaders who could sense the right move in complex or fast-changing situations because they trusted their gut, backed by experience and understanding. This chapter also points out that intuition isn't just a mysterious talent. You can develop it by gaining experience, observing carefully, and reflecting on past decisions. Maxwell emphasizes that leaders with strong intuition don't just react, they proactively steer their teams toward the best outcomes. Reflection to consider. How strong is your leadership intuition? Are you trusting your instincts, and more importantly, are you sharpening them through experience? Because leadership isn't just about knowledge or skills, it's also about sensing the right path forward before others do. Let's dive into Chapter 9, the Law of Magnetism. This law states, who you are is who you attract. In other words, leaders tend to attract people who are similar to themselves, whether it's in terms of attitude, values, work ethic, or energy. Maxwell explains that your leadership style and personal qualities naturally draw certain types of people to you. If you want to build a strong team, it starts with developing yourself, because your team will reflect your strengths and weaknesses. He gives examples of leaders who surrounded themselves with talented, motivated individuals because they embodied those qualities themselves. On the flip side, if you have a weak leadership lid or poor habits, you'll often attract followers who mirror those same limitations. This law is a reminder that self-improvement isn't just about you. It shapes the entire culture and capability of your team. Think about this. What kind of people are you attracting right now? Are they the kind of teammates or followers you want to have? Because raising your leadership standards will naturally bring the right people to you, and that's how strong teams are built. Now, let's talk about Chapter 10, the Law of Connection. This law says, leaders touch a heart before they ask for a hand. What does that mean? Maxwell emphasizes that leadership is deeply relational. Before people will follow your direction or work hard for your vision, they need to feel connected to you personally. It's not enough to give orders or set goals. People want to know you care, that you understand them, and that you value their contributions. Maxwell shares stories of leaders who took time to build trust and emotional bonds with their teams, which made their leadership far more effective. He also explains that connection happens through empathy, active listening, and genuine interest in others' lives, not just professional interactions. When leaders make that emotional connection, they inspire loyalty, enthusiasm, and commitment. Here's a question for you. Are you connecting with the people you lead on a personal level? Or are you simply focused on tasks and results? Because the stronger your connection, the more willing people are to follow you, even through tough times. Let's move on to Chapter 11, the Law of the Inner Circle. This law states, a leader's potential is determined by those closest to him. In simple terms, the people you surround yourself with, your inner circle, directly impact how far you can go as a leader. Maxwell explains that no one succeeds alone. The right team, advisors, and close supporters can amplify your strengths, help fill your weaknesses, and push you to new heights. He points out that some leaders struggle because they keep the wrong people close, those who drain energy, lack commitment, or don't share the vision. On the flip side, leaders with strong inner circles have trusted confidants who provide honest feedback, challenge their thinking, and help them execute strategies effectively. The key takeaway is that your leadership capacity grows as you grow your team's capacity. Here's something to think about. Who's in your inner circle? Are they helping you become a better leader or holding you back? Because investing in the right people isn't just smart, it's essential for leadership success. Now, let's dive into Chapter 12, the Law of Empowerment. This powerful law says, only secure leaders give power to others. What does that mean? Maxwell explains that real leaders don't hold tightly to control or authority, they empower others to lead and make decisions. But here's the catch, only leaders who are confident and secure in their own position can afford to do this. Empowering others means trusting your team, delegating responsibility, and giving people the freedom to take ownership. Maxwell shares examples of leaders who created high-performing teams by empowering those around them, allowing creativity and initiative to flourish. On the flip side, leaders who fear losing control often micromanage or block others' growth, which ultimately limits the whole team's success. Reflection time. Are you empowering those around you? Or are you holding the reins too tightly out of insecurity? Because the best leaders understand that growing other leaders is the path to lasting impact. Let's move on to Chapter 13, the Law of the Picture. This law states, people do what people see. What does that mean? Maxwell points out that leaders set the example through their behavior, attitudes, and actions. People don't just follow what you say, they follow what you do. If you want your team to work hard, show integrity, and stay committed, you need to model those qualities yourself. He shares stories of leaders whose personal example inspired their teams to achieve remarkable results, and also examples where poor leadership behavior led to failure. This law reminds us that leadership is caught, not taught. Your team watches you closely, your habits, your work ethic, your reactions, and they'll mirror what they see. Here's a question to reflect on. Are you the kind of leader your team wants to follow? Are your actions aligning with your words? Because when your picture is strong and clear, your influence multiplies naturally. Now, let's dive into Chapter 14, the Law of Buy-in. This law tells us, people buy into the leader, then the vision. What does that mean? Maxwell explains that before people will commit to your ideas or goals, they first have to believe in you as a leader. If they don't trust or respect you, no matter how great your vision is, they won't follow it. It's like trying to sell a product. If the customer doesn't trust the salesperson, the sale won't happen. Similarly, leadership is about building that initial trust and credibility. Maxwell shares examples of leaders who succeeded because people believed in them, even when the vision was risky or challenging. He also highlights leaders who failed because they never earned their followers' buy-in. The key takeaway? You can have the best plan in the world, but without people buying into you first, it won't get traction. Think about this. Do the people you lead trust and believe in you? Are you investing in your relationships enough to earn their buy-in? Because leadership starts with you, then comes the vision. Let's talk about Chapter 15, the Law of Victory. This law states, leaders find a way for the team to win. What does that really mean? Maxwell explains that great leaders are committed to victory, not just participation or good effort. They refuse to accept defeat and are willing to do whatever it takes to lead their team to success. But victory doesn't just happen by chance. It requires focus, resilience, and the ability to rally people around a common goal. Maxwell shares inspiring stories of leaders who faced huge obstacles but found creative solutions to overcome them and lead their teams to triumph. He also notes that leaders who settle for less than victory often lose the confidence and respect of their followers. Here's something to consider. Are you committed to victory in your leadership? Are you the kind of leader who pushes through challenges and inspires others to do the same? Because true leadership is about achieving real results. And that means leading your team to win. Now, let's explore Chapter 16, the Law of the Big MO. This law says, momentum is a leader's best friend. What does that mean? Maxwell explains that once momentum builds, it makes leadership easier and progress faster. Momentum helps teams overcome obstacles, maintain energy, and push forward even when things get tough. Think of it like a snowball rolling downhill. At first, it's small and slow, but as it gathers mass, it becomes unstoppable. Leaders play a key role in creating and maintaining momentum by making good decisions, motivating the team, and keeping focus. Maxwell shares examples of leaders who seized momentum at the right time and used it to propel their organizations to new heights. On the flip side, when momentum is lost, progress slows and leaders often face burnout or frustration. Here's a question for you. Are you building momentum in your leadership right now? What small wins can you celebrate and build on to keep moving forward? Because once momentum takes hold, it becomes your strongest ally in achieving lasting success. Next, we're looking at Chapter 17, the Law of Priorities. This law says, leaders understand that activity is not necessarily accomplishment. In other words, just being busy doesn't mean you're being effective. Maxwell explains that successful leaders prioritize what matters most. They don't try to do everything. They focus their time, energy, and resources on the few things that generate the biggest results. He introduces the 3 R's to help leaders determine their priorities. What is required? What must you do that no one else can do? What gives the greatest return? What brings the highest impact or payoff? What brings the greatest reward? What aligns with your passion and purpose? Maxwell reminds us that without clear priorities, even great leaders can get pulled into distractions, burn out, or waste time on the wrong tasks. Here's your reflection. Are you leading with intention, or just reacting to everything that comes your way? What should you say no to so you can say yes to what truly matters? Because leadership isn't just about doing things right, it's about doing the right things. Let's keep going with Chapter 18, the Law of Sacrifice. This law tells us, a leader must give up to go up. That's a powerful and challenging truth. Maxwell explains that leadership always requires sacrifice of time, comfort, personal priorities, and sometimes even recognition. The higher you go in leadership, the more you'll be asked to give up. This chapter is full of examples of leaders who gave up convenience or personal gain to serve a greater purpose. And in doing so, they gained respect, loyalty, and long-term influence. One key idea here is that the cost of leadership increases the more responsibility you carry. True leaders are willing to make those sacrifices, not because they're forced to, but because they understand it's part of the calling. Maxwell is clear. You can't lead effectively if you're only in it for yourself. Great leaders let go of personal privileges to lift others up. So ask yourself, what are you willing to give up to grow as a leader? Because every level of leadership requires letting go of something at the level before. Let's talk about Chapter 19, the Law of Timing. This law says, when to lead is as important as what to do and where to go. Maxwell emphasizes that great leaders don't just know what to do, they know when to do it. Even the right decision, if made at the wrong time, can lead to failure, confusion, or missed opportunities. He gives examples of leaders who made bold decisions at the perfect moment and others who failed because they either acted too soon or too late. The law of timing is about reading the moment, the mood of your team, the readiness of the market, the urgency of a crisis. Leaders who get this right build momentum and confidence. Those who don't can lose trust and stall progress. It takes discernment, experience, and sometimes patience to know not just how, but when to move forward. Reflection time. Are you paying attention to timing in your leadership? Is now the right time to make that move, have that conversation, or shift your strategy? Because in leadership, good timing turns ideas into impact. Now, let's look at Chapter 20, the Law of Explosive Growth. This law teaches us to add growth, lead followers; to multiply, lead leaders. Here's what that means. If you want steady growth, focus on leading followers, people who depend on your direction. But if you want exponential, game-changing growth, you have to lead leaders, people who can, in turn, lead others. Maxwell explains that leaders who only build followers eventually hit a ceiling. Their impact is limited to what they can personally manage or oversee. But leaders who invest in developing other leaders create multiplication. Their influence spreads faster, wider, and deeper because more leaders means more reach and more capacity. He shares examples of organizations that grew rapidly because their leaders focused on building leadership at every level. This chapter is really a challenge to think beyond short-term wins. It's about creating a leadership pipeline, mentoring, equipping, and empowering others to lead with confidence. Ask yourself this: are you just collecting followers, or are you developing leaders? Because your greatest legacy as a leader will be the leaders you raise up. We've made it to the final chapter, Chapter 21, the Law of Legacy. This law says, a leader's lasting value is measured by succession. In other words, your true impact as a leader isn't just what you achieve, it's what you leave behind. Maxwell explains that great leaders think beyond their own timeline. They focus on building something that can outlast them, an organization, a team, or a movement that keeps growing even after they're gone. This chapter isn't about fame or recognition. It's about purpose. It's about asking, what do I want to be remembered for? What kind of leadership culture am I building for the next generation? Maxwell gives examples of leaders who were intentional about legacy, those who mentored others, created strong values, and left behind systems and structures that sustained success long after their tenure ended. He encourages us to lead with the end in mind, to start shaping our legacy now, not someday in the future. Because the most powerful thing you can do as a leader is prepare others to carry the vision forward. So here's your final reflection from this book. If you stopped leading today, what would continue because of you? What kind of legacy are you actively building? Because leadership that lasts is leadership that lives on through others. That brings us to the end of our journey through the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. Now, before we recall all 21 laws at once with you, I have a request for you. If this video helped you understand what the book is all about, give it a like, share it with a fellow leader, and subscribe if you haven't already, because we've got more book summary content coming your way. Also, leave a comment to let me know what books I can work on in the future. Okay, here are the 21 laws all in one go. 1. The Law of the Lid. Your leadership ability determines your effectiveness. 2. The Law of Influence. Leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. 3. The Law of Process. Leadership develops daily, not in a day. 4. The Law of Navigation. Anyone can steer the ship, but leaders chart the course. 5. The Law of Addition. Leaders add value by serving others. 6. The Law of Solid Ground. Trust is the foundation of leadership. 7. The Law of Respect. People follow strength and integrity. 8. The Law of Intuition. Leaders sense things others don't. 9. The Law of Magnetism. Who you are is who you attract. 10. The Law of Connection. Connect with hearts before asking for hands. 11. The Law of the Inner Circle. Your potential rises with the strength of your team. 12. The Law of Empowerment. Secure leaders give power to others. 13. The Law of the Picture. People do what people see. 14. The Law of Buy-in. People buy into the leader before the vision. 15. The Law of Victory. Leaders find a way for the team to win. 16. The Law of the Big MO. Momentum is a leader's best friend. 17. The Law of Priorities. Activity doesn't equal accomplishment. 18. The Law of Sacrifice. You have to give up to go up. 19. The Law of Timing. When to lead is as important as what to do. 20. The Law of Explosive Growth. Lead leaders, not just followers. 21. The Law of Legacy. A leader's lasting value is measured by succession. Which one of these laws spoke to you the most? Let me know in the comments.